$10. For just $10, you can experience a full-length Resident Evil story with cutscenes, upgrades, and plenty of side requests. What I'm talking about is the most recent expansion for Resident Evil 4 titled Separate Ways. This DLC was announced at the PlayStation Showcase on September 14th for a quick release date of September 21st. In Separate Ways, you take on the role of Notorious and Super Badass by Ada Wong, getting a chance to see the events of RE4 from her perspective and in conjunction to Leon's story. Now, I can't speak to what they might have added or changed compared to the original Separate Ways, as just like the RE4 remake, that was my first time experiencing the story, so this is also my first time experiencing the Separate Ways DLC. And for the $10 asking price, what's on offer is more than fair enough to justify it. Like I mentioned earlier in this DLC, you take the role of Ada Wong, and you learn more about her mission and why she is present during the events of the base game. While this isn't going to be an entire rehash of the base game, it does use a lot of the same set pieces, either right before or just after Leon has went through the area. One of the cooler moments early on that I thought is ringing the bell in Separate Ways is a way for her to help out Leon as she sees that he's kind of fighting for his life out there in the village.
Sounds like you could use a little help.
Being able to see her perspective of the events and the ways that they unfold was an interesting touch that was something that harkened back to the RE2 remake as you were playing as Leon and Claire, and seeing how their two stories would also intersect within one another. The excellent gameplay of RE4 makes a return, along with the addition of a grappling hook that Ada can use to traverse the environment, along with the right charm equipped being able to use it to pull shields away from enemies, leaving them open to an easier strike. Ada also takes advantage of some high-tech gear thanks to her employer, like an eye scanner that allows her to track clues in the environment. Her arsenal is going to be a lot smaller, but I found it easier to manage as I wasn't constantly juggling between weapons and different ammo types. While Ada is a different character than Leon, they largely still play the same as one another, with really the only big difference being her kicks and the way that they incorporate the grappling gun. She does have access to the merchant just like Leon, but doesn't have the same items, and there is a little bit of cheeky dialogue between Ada and the merchant where they kind of talk about not letting Leon know that she's buying items. The story in Separate Ways starts with Luis being rescued by our protagonist Ada Wong, as she has infiltrated the castle and is looking to extract the amber from the island. The amber is believed to be the catalyst for the Las Plagas infection that has affected the village in the main game. It's here early on that we are thrown into a pretty quick boss fight that I was not expecting so soon, but it felt nice to jump right back into things. Once you escape to the courtyard outside, you begin to notice a lot of the similar areas from the main game, but with a little bit of twist this time.
That's where I need to go.
Stick to the high ground. You have the means.
Further on in the story, once leaving the castle, we do also come into contact with Menendez, who is another boss that you took down as Leon, but this time he's chasing Ada down just for a small segment. All the while, she is trying to meet back up with Luis as she's leaving clues to his whereabouts. We also get to have a pretty tense fight with El Gigante as he's leveling building after building as Ada zips from building to building with her grapple, taking him down, which was a really cool use of the grapple and verticality in those areas. And I do love seeing how these two stories intersect with one another. You get to see in the opening how Luis got that pack of smokes, and then using those smokes to leave a radio frequency was a cool little touch that wouldn't have made sense if you saw it just in Resident Evil 4, but does make sense playing the Separate Ways DLC.
Excellent timing, Ada. You know how I feel about being tied up. And yes, many thanks.
And after working her way out of the factory, Ada comes under the influence of the Las Plagas infection and starts to have these visions and eventually does pass out. This isn't going to be the last time that she has the visions, as she is currently infected with the Las Plagas. It is here that we get the best look that we have gotten of this character in a long, long time. Albert Wesker is revealed to be the main mastermind at the end of the base game of Resident Evil 4, who had hired Ada, but here we actually get to see that he was present and on the ground during the events of the base game. Wesker is a cool character because whether Ada likes it or not, she's working for him, and it does get under her skin a little bit, having essentially what is a glorified babysitter follow and watch her every move. The entire time that we have been playing this DLC, we've been stalked and followed by a cloaked figure who, as many people had suspected from the trailer, is the monster U3 from the original Resident Evil 4. Does have a new name this time around named Placenta. I might have messed that up, but I'm sorry. And this was one of the things that I guess people was sorely missing from the remake. So it was nice for them to incorporate that into the DLC, and it served as a pretty tough and challenging boss fight, I thought. Another returning feature from the original is the laser wall, which has you hitting a QuickTime event prompt, but with a little added level of cinematic flair this time. It's crazy that this scene was cut in the first place because as someone who had never even played the original Resident Evil 4, I even knew about the scene and how iconic it was. Ada isn't left much of a choice as Wesker is forcing her to deliver a briefcase with the contents of the briefcase being unknown to Ada at the time. Wesker is no longer interested in the amber, but on destroying the nearby island where Ashley has been taken and Leon is set to follow. And I know I mentioned this earlier, but I really can't get over how cool it was to see the events of Ada's story unfold, but from a different perspective. It's like watching your favorite movie, but if you have the ability to see the movie from someone else's perspective and point of view within the world, allowing you to have a little bit more nuggets of information and to paint a bigger picture as to how Separate Ways fits into the picture as a whole and Ada's motives as well. It always seemed weird to me how she was popping in and out of the story, but it was when it served its purpose the most and she needed Leon to buy her time in some instances. And after so many times of using Leon, she does feel a little guilty and almost obliged to help him save Ashley. By saving Leon, she does put herself at risk and lead to the events that we see in the main game where Ada is tied up at the hands of Sadler. And just as we know in the base game, Leon shows up and frees Ada, all the while the big boss battle from the ending of the main game takes place in the background. Ada is able to assist Leon with stopping Sadler, but still plans to let a portion of the bombs go off, tossing the keys for the jet ski to Leon and Ashley to make a last-second escape as she's lifted off in the helicopter. Now this is going to be the spoiler segment. This is just where I'm going to talk about the ending of the game and what I think is going to happen next. So at the end of the game, once the credits have rolled, it is revealed that Ada has changed course of the helicopter, and this is meant to head back to what I'm presumably is going to be Wesker's base. And it is after a conversation with Wesker where he mentions that the amount of lives lost from this could be upwards in the millions. And this does give Ada a little pause for concern. With Wesker hot in tow on his sick-looking private ship, I do believe that it's either Menendez or Sadler's body that we do see, but I'm not entirely sure. Either or, it does seem like Capcom is teeing up more Resident Evil content in the future, whether that be Code Veronica or, in my opinion, what seems most likely, Resident Evil 5. If you already own Resident Evil 4 and you're asking yourself, should I pick this up? The answer is going to be a quick and easy yes. It's everything you love from the base game, but packed into what is essentially its own little bite-sized version of the game. If you wanted more of Resident Evil 4, this is going to be right up your alley. With nearly 7 chapters to go through and just a little over 4 hours of gameplay, this DLC is a hell of a deal for $10. Plenty of action, plenty of boss fights to keep the blood pumping, and a few puzzles to keep you going that are sprinkled on throughout the remake. So all in all, if you're looking for a good time and have got $10 to spare, I think it'll be worth it. If you did make it this far, I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your day, and this has been my review for the Resident Evil 4 Remake DLC, Separate Ways. Thank you for watching.
Ride's here. Coming?
I think we both know this is where we go our separate ways.